What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon. Officially, taking a break from daddy duty? Is that what we're gonna call this? Because obviously you've been knee deep, I'm sure, in diapers, spit up, all types of things at this point.
All of it, bro. The spit up, the burps. Yeah, it's all, I got all of it going on right now. But no, she was asleep and I told Sarah, I was like, I'm gonna run up here and do this with Miko, and she's cool with it. So I'll be back down there, back at it here in a little bit, and on we go until we're out of this part where we're just sleeping and eating.
I was gonna say, this is like the fun part of parenting. Like, for anyone who's like watching who doesn't have kids, this is the fun part. Everything after like this phase where it's only like one of two things, either they're eating, sleeping, or pooping, everything beyond that starts getting chaotic. But super glad to have you back, man. Obviously tried to hold down the fort while you were doing something that's way more important than making YouTube videos. But for those of you guys who are tuning in, watching this, again, welcome in. If this is your first time checking out the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel, we highly recommend that you hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Those things help us out as a channel, but more importantly, it makes it that much easier for you guys to find our content whenever we decide to go live, because we do that on a couple of days out of the week. We go live here on YouTube and over on Twitch, and also whenever we upload videos throughout the week. So if you want to be able to catch that content as soon as it hits, you want to make sure that you're subscribed and have notifications on. But Morgan, with all the business stuff out of the way, we are obviously here to talk about the latest season of Quarterback over on Netflix. This is officially the second season of this version of the series. Obviously, they have done 3 versions. We talk about 2 seasons of Quarterback, and then they did the 1 season of Receiver. And this is the second time that we have a Lions player featured on one of these seasons. Back in Receiver, we got to get an inside look at Amon-Ra St. Brown. This year, it's a lot of Jared Goff. And this was a series that when we talk about Receiver, we watched and we kind of reacted to that one. I bounced around a lot in that series. This is one that I actually watched all the way through from beginning to end. And so I'm really curious to get from you, like, what were your overall thoughts of the series at this point, or now that it's kind of wrapped up?
Yeah, just got through it. We tried to get through it so we could make this video and talk about it because, hey, it's July 9th and we need something to talk about here until a couple more weeks until training camp gets rolling and we can watch some football. So overall, it was cool, man. I like Jared. You and I are people who have come full circle. Like I've talked about on social media and everything else, I'm not afraid to admit when I was wrong, and how Goff picked himself up from where he was in 2021 to where he is now is nothing short of extraordinary, in my opinion. Like, it's truly so crazy to think about. So I was excited to watch this. Came away, like, I think I tweeted about it. I can't love Dan Campbell anymore if I tried. Like, legit, that man, he is the best, bro. He might be one of the best leaders I've ever been around in any like space, like in terms of like viewing or like personally anything. Hearing him talk in person is crazy. As someone who covered an OTA in place of Jeremy before they broke for the summer, just a really good person, and it shines through once again. Like, we've seen him through like Receiver with Saint. Yep. Hard Knocks back in 2022, and when America fell in love with him, we're like, this is really just him, man. I think some people think it's performative, but it's not. But I'll get off that tangent. Enjoyed it though, and I really like Kristen Goff, Jared's wife. I think she's awesome. We can get into that in a little bit, but yeah, what about you, bro? Do you enjoy it?
No, I did. Like I said, I wasn't a huge fan. First of all, not a huge fan of reality TV in general. So this was actually something that I was surprised that like it actually kept my attention from beginning to end. And it wasn't just the Jared Goff parts. Like I enjoyed getting a more of an inside look at Joe Burrow. I was about to say Kirk Cousins. At Joe Burrow. I did find the Kirk Cousins part interesting in regards to like how he handled adversity and how he was handling like the transition from going from Minnesota to Atlanta and things like that. But the parts with Jared definitely just hit a little bit differently. And I think that's one thing that surprised me, because we get to see Jared quite a bit here in the media, and he's very like business-like. And that's what kind of made it a little surprising that he was like going to be a part of a show like this. Cause I'm like, I see this dude do media availability, and he's very much like, I don't want to say going through the motions, Morgan, but you can tell that he would much rather be doing something else than answering the media's questions. And so to see him a little more opened up, and to see his relationship with his wife, and to see what the move from LA to Detroit has really done for him in the last few years was one of the best things to see. And obviously you put a nice bow on that, in the sense that like last season they had their best season ever as a franchise. everything just like hit a whole lot differently when we're talking about the aspects of the show with Jared Goff in it.
Yeah, and it was, some of it was stuff that Lions fans had maybe heard before, like in terms of, the move from and being, blindsided in LA, in LA, and just having to like deal with that and like, okay, you're going to Detroit, but then getting that phone call from Brad and Dan. So it was cool to hear that again. And then some more from Kristen's perspective too, right? Like, just, I thought that was kind of interesting, just looping her into that, and then moving to Detroit. And yeah, it was cool to hear Jared talk his, a little bit too, about the former. He's like, I think a lot of people in my former organization. And then he brought up the maturity thing. And I'm like, hey, man, at this point, if he feels like he wants to talk about it that way, I support him, because there's obviously, they handled that poorly on that end, in my opinion. Right.
Well, and I think he's handled it politically correct. Like, since the move happened, he's said all the right things since then. And I think whether it's hindsight being 2020 or just that's how he initially like felt all along, like he's able to say that now. And I appreciate, like, to your point, I appreciate him being much more open about that. And I appreciate, like you said, him and his wife being open about the move to Detroit and like being like, yeah, I wasn't really sure because I've never been here and I've never experienced this city. I think throughout the series, you see from both of them, like their ability to embrace the city, to embrace the team, and be such a key part of everything that is going right in Detroit these days.
Yeah, and it like even down to the end, man, that was brutal to watch, which I knew it was going to be. But when Kristen was crying, I just thought that was kind of just surreal for a second, right? Because you have this supermodel. She's from California, as I understand it. And she's sitting up there in her suite crying. And she's like, I just can't believe we're not going to be here next week. Like, we got this lady crying about not being in Detroit in like late January, when it was, if y'all are from around here, it's cold, it's gray. And she was just bawling, just like my mom was to the right of me, just like my friend Sweater was to the left of me. So that was kind of surreal, right, bro? That was just like, dang, like that's kind of where I already liked Kristen. I always thought she was nice, but yeah, that's kind of where it hit for me. I was like, one of us, the little one of us meme or whatever with the aliens.
Absolutely. And I guess I should have said this at the beginning of this video. If you have not watched the series, like there are going to be spoilers. So I guess late just spoiler warning, title but whatever, yeah. Right. I'll make sure to throw it in the title. Yeah. So, but yeah, probably from this point on, there probably may be some more detailed spoilers. So if you do plan on still watching the show, listen, you can pause this video, go watch the series, and then come back. Like YouTube's not going anywhere.
But you also probably saw the season. You already saw it. It was spoiled already. All right. We knew it was going to end.
You know how the Lions season ends. So yeah, I guess we're not spoiling that much. But with that said, what was one of your favorite moments from the series? Whether it can be, it can be golf related, it can be non-golf related. But yeah, something that really stood out to you, from this season.
Man, I'm gonna go with this. I thought it was cool that they reminisced on the first win of the Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell era. I thought that was really cool. I still remember that, bro. It was cold and rainy. They were 0-10-1 at the time. There's maybe like 45,000 of us in the stadium that day. Like no one was sitting up at the very top. Like at that point, everyone came down, was pretty much in the mezzanine where I sit, or like the very bottom of the upper level. People stuck around, and you guys know how it ended. Like the walk off to Saint really gets him rolling. And that was just a cool day, man, just to get that win, like to get that off their backs. Cause they had been close, if y'all remember, during that 2021 season. Like it's not like, they were getting pummeled here and there, but they had been close a couple times, but they just couldn't figure it out. So that was the beginning of something. And I remember I was so happy. I don't really drink at games, but I was just drunk off happiness. I think at that point I was running up Gratiot, and I tried to jump over this sign. I'm like, just lit, I'm trying to get back to the truck pretty quick. I parked in the market, and I just nipped the top of it. Boom. Fell right there on Gratiot. And someone checked on me. I was like, I'm good, man. I couldn't even be hurt right now if I tried. That's what that makes me think of. So that was probably my favorite part. What about you?
I got to go with both the Titans game and the Texans game, because going back to that season, right? Going back to last season, Morgan, like that's two games where the offense did not play really well. Specifically, Jared didn't play all that great in those games. And it's always interesting to see, like, obviously when he gets up at the podium at the end of it, he's like, oh, you just kind of start to compartmentalize it. You start doing this. And it's like, to see that raw emotion though, where he's like you were telling me, like off camera, where it's like, bro, like get mad, like show that you're upset, show that these things are affecting you in some sort of way. I think that's always like a really good like moment to kind of like focus on, because as we're watching the game, you're just like, man, like what type of headspace is he in? How does he get from where he's at to, them to be able to make that amazing comeback against the Texans, for them to be able to start to kind of right the ship against the Titans, and also like highlighting that ankle injury, because I had forgot all about the fact that he had rolled his ankle pretty bad in that game. So those two things really like stood out to me in this season.
I'm glad you brought, especially the Texans game, man. That's going to be something that I'll always fall back on as a fan, just because like they played so like they did not play well, like just didn't execute well offensively until the very end, but they made it happen, man. And I was like, this team that was before, the last big wave of injuries happened in Buffalo. So I was at that point, I was like, you couldn't tell me nothing. I was like, they played their worst game and beat a legit AFC team on the road. So yeah, I like that you brought that up, man, because that, in my opinion, that was huge. And Goff is tough. That's something I've thought that for a while now. Because like we talked about, me and Miko both have changed our proven wrong and happily proven wrong, right? But even before he really turned around his play, I never questioned his toughness. But he's just a tough, like for being a Cali kid and kind of being gangly with like a little bit of a dad bod. I'm not trying to hate, man. Like it is what it is. But yeah, he's tough. Can't ever question that, right, bro? Remember like when he was still with the Rams, he popped his thumb back in.
Yep. I was gonna speaking of dad bods though, and this is not necessarily related to well, obviously it's in the series. Joe Burrow's a little more jacked than I thought he was.
Yeah.
The episode where they were like talking about like some of like the elbow issues or whatever, and I was like, yo, like Joe don't skip gym days. Like he's not just like, just a pocket passer in that regard. But so okay, we have our best moments. Anything that happened in the series that kind of like caught you off guard or kind of just like, oh, that was interesting or something like that?
I wanted to see more of like his interactions with like the offensive line and the skilled players, like something that would have been kind of cool. I guess that's not really something that caught me off guard, but I thought we were going to get more of that. But I guess they had a lot to pack in there with Burrow. Like they spent a whole bunch of time on the break in, They spent entirely too much time. I'm good on Kirk Cousins content, man. I'm sure he's a fine human being. Maybe, probably, I don't know. Depends on who you ask. But I'm good on Kirk Cousins content. So like I could have done without some Kirk Cousins content and maybe Jared talking to Panay or learning more about Sam, something like that. Talking to Jameson. I want to hear Jameson and Goff talk. That would be must-see TV, in my opinion.
I was going to say, like, in an offense that's as talented as the Lions offense was, like, it would have been really interesting to see that dynamic between your quarterback and the rest of those pieces. Been like, I'm kind of right there with you. Like, I'm a little surprised that they didn't ask more questions about his relationship with his teammates and the importance of his offensive line, because as great as Jared has been and been improving over the last few seasons, he also, and I think he even says it in the series, like he understands that he's surrounded by a wealth of talent. And so it's just a little weird that they didn't really highlight that aspect of it. I know another thing for me that really stood out, and it's not like we've heard Dan say these things, we've heard Ben Johnson say these things, but it's a different thing to kind of see it play out. And it is how much command that Jared takes over this offense and really like imposes his will on what he would like to see the team do and what he would like he can't necessarily tell Ben like, hey, call this play, right? Especially when he's already on the field. But it's like he even says it when there's one of the plays that they end up calling. I think it was like the touchdown pass to Laporta. And he's just like willing it into existence. And he's just like that's a byproduct of him and Ben having such a close relationship, that he wants a play called. He's in the huddle, like begging for it to be called. Ben Johnson can't hear him. And it just so happens to be that's the play that they call.
Yep. Bro, like I love that you brought that up. So my wife, lot smarter than me, a lot more everything than me, to be honest with you. But she was like, it's interesting to see like, Kirk Cousins continuing to complain about all the motion. And then Goff is getting like 4 plays at a time at the line of scrimmage that he can check into. And I was like, you know what? That is a good observation. And that's because, like Miko just said, Goff's been in the system for a minute, man. And he's, him and Ben had this thing going. And that's why Ben Johnson made that comment at the end of, like, before he left. If you remember, he was like, it's all built there. They just need somebody calling the plays. Like, because Goff gets it. Like that install that you talked about for the Wasp, the double move for Sam Laporta, where he's acting like he's running towards the boundary and then bends it back inside. It's because they had, they saw there was a tendency install. So that's something that they saw and identified and on like film study, and then put that in. And so it was good to see Jared get that, because He's good at that, man. More often than not, I feel like he checks into like good plays. Like usually when I'm like, watching the game live and I see him check into something, I'm like, okay, I feel pretty good about this because Jared typically knows he's smart. You obviously got to give
Yeah.
him that. So yeah, that was a cool moment to me too because I was like, oh, okay, so he was one step ahead, and yeah, that was cool.
Yeah. I also got to say, like, I guess I'm kind of going backwards. Another thing that I thought was like a really cool moment was when Jared's like breaking down the Vikings and talking about what they do so well. As you and I do try to do our best with our film studies, like it's sometimes really hard to articulate and be able to explain to people like, hey, this is what cover zero is, and this is why, like, even though a team runs this at a high percentage, this is why it's hard to dissect, and this is how they're able to do X, Y, and Z. Like Jared's ability to do that when talking about the Vikings was also one of my favorite moments because it's a pure football moment. I think in that.
Yeah, he's a football nerd, and you have to be a quarterback at a high level in the NFL. Just because you guys see, like, it was cool to see Netflix and like the production team really hone in on how difficult it is, like to play quarterback and how much goes on from the time you get the play call and like break the huddle till you get to the line of scrimmage, right? There's so much that happens. So yeah, to see Goff be that comfortable, like playing against the Vikings, like Brian Flores is notoriously one of the more difficult defensive coordinators to go against because of what you saw. He was mugging up the line of scrimmage. There's 7 people there. You think they're in zero, but if they're not in zero and you throw it to a spot, bad things can happen, as we saw. That happens to everybody, to be honest. And it's because defenses are complex, man, just as much as offenses are. Defenses have to adjust, and the Vikings do a good job of it, and they have good personnel to make it work too, especially up front.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I got 2 more questions, then we'll probably get you guys up out of here. But one of them being, Morgan, again, like I said at the top of the video, the Lions have been on receivers, or they've had a Lion on the receivers version of this show, and they've also now had Jared Goff on the quarterbacks version of the show. In both iterations of this show, unfortunately, the Lions' postseason dream comes to a pretty abrupt halt. Not abrupt, I guess, in the receivers one, but comes to a halt in a way that definitely like rocks you to your core. When comparing the two, which one do you think was a little more like gut wrenching in having to like relive that moment?
I'm gonna go with the first one, just because this one we were having a discussion in POD Slack, and it made me think about that. Like, really, that the last nail in the coffin, if you will, really was the Aleem and Carlton Davis injuries against Buffalo. Because after that, like, you had a house of cards built on a waterbed, is kind of how I put it.
Mm-hmm.
And once they lost the Meek man, and then they started turning the ball over, I was like, this really doesn't even feel attainable now. Even in the moment, as jacked as we all were, like, you kind of see like all those the panning around of like the faces. Like, some people were rocked, but then I feel like other people were like, yeah, this is a crappy way to end the season. But it makes more sense than 2023 did. 2023 just felt like the rug got snatched out from under you, just being up like that. But yeah, what about you? What do you think was worse?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the 2023 version was so much worse, and it's because like the Lions had the game in their hand in that first half, and to just like watch it, like you said, have the rug just kind of pulled out from under you against the 49ers is really what made that gut wrenching. You look at what Jared and this team had to go through last season, it really did feel like a dream. Like we were going into that game with a lot of copium, right? That this team could still get
It's a good way to put it.
to the Super Bowl with 11 dudes out on defense, like,
Yeah,
or however many guys we were missing. Like it like
it's
we were
incredible.
still trying to believe that like, oh, they could still get there. And as it started happening, like before the game was over, it kind of just like settled in for me, at least as a fan, where it was just like, yeah, this is kind of what was probably always going to happen.
At one point or another. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Like, when Amik broke his arm, and like, so our seats, Miko sat with me before, we are by the tunnel, or in the mezzanine by the tunnel there. And I saw how they were supporting his arm. I've said this before on the channel. I was like, oh, that thing's broke, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was, what were you going to say though?
The only other thing I was going to say was like, I will say the thing about this version that did make it a little bit sadder, and you kind of pointed this out in the Slack as well, is Graham telling Jared like how sorry he was at the end. Like, as gut wrenching as it probably was for us as fans, like imagine being the players in that situation where you've gone out and you've had the best season in your franchise's history. You have the number 1 seed. the path to the Super Bowl is as clear as it will ever be, at least, or at least it seems like it'll ever be at that time. And it's a couple plays here and there, that cost them that game, and some injuries as well, like we just said.
Yeah, and I'm sure Graham felt bad, and it not reaffirms, but because I don't want to speak in, certainties, but we've talked about before, wondering how banged up Graham was towards the end of the season. And then, yeah, just to hear him that upset, talking to Jared and saying he's so sorry, like that tore me up, man. I don't know if that's my newfound softness as a parent, but yeah, that made me sad. I was like, it's because it wasn't just on Graham, like, like he's probably thinking about that rep where the Lions could have potentially gone up 14-3, but it's the sack fumble. And then that's when, if you remember, that's when stuff started to go sideways, because it was right there on the precipice of being 14-3. And then maybe they could have limped their way to probably a beat down against Philadelphia, if I'm keeping it a whole buck with y'all. But yeah, it was a overall pretty tough way to end and, see that. But cool to see Jared get right back on the horse. A couple lighthearted things that I wanted to include. Jared feeling bad when they were against the Titans, and he was like, essentially, I remember this, used to be us. Like, dang, I kind of feel, I don't know what he said. Like, to certain words, he was like, I feel bad. And Saint was like, nah, run that, what up? I was like, that's so stupid.
Saint's a savage, man. Like, bro.
He is. And then Jared talking like the work he does with the city's youth and the scholarships, like him and Kristen's always down here in Detroit at like a Gleaners, like the food pantry. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another reason I probably, warmed up to Kristen and Jared more through this, just because they do a lot for the community here in Detroit, and definitely appreciative of that for sure, because don't have to do it, but cool to see them like get so much joy out of it. Goff like crying, talking to the students. They were just like, yeah, thank you for the scholarships.
Yeah, that's something that I don't think is faked either, right? Like that generosity to want to be able to give back and to be able to do it in a city like Detroit, I think does like impact you in some sort of way. I can't remember who said it, but I saw somebody on Twitter once say that like they believe that the city of Detroit does change people. Like when they come here, whether it's athletes or celebrities, that the way that the city embraces their celebrities and their athletes is different than most places. And I think Jared and his wife have really got a front row seat to that ever since they got here back in 2021.
Yeah. Shout out. It was Corey Woods. Shout out Corey.
Okay, it was Corey. Yep.
Yeah. So that's our guy. I do agree, bro. Like you see people love it here. Like I saw a couple weeks ago. Yeah, it was so I was off because my daughter had been born, but I saw Romeo Quara getting coffee a couple miles from me. He was just getting coffee. I was like, who's this big guy? Because, I was like, this guy's like 3 inches taller than me and huge. I was like, who is that? I was like, oh, it's Romeo Quara. Because he's really involved in like that, the Shepherd. It's like an art installation over there on the east side of Detroit. Okay. So, yeah. Like Corey said, though, people stay here, man. The city's special.
Absolutely. So speaking of special, like I said, Netflix has done this for 3 seasons now. I'm counting it all as 3 seasons, even though it's 2 as quarterback, 1 as receiver. Do you think this is a series that that Netflix should continue? And if they do, who's the next Lion that you would like to see featured on the next iteration?
I could be chalky and say Panay, like probably everyone expects me to say, and that would be really cool. But they have I think they have 3 kids now, so I don't know how raring to be they're going to, I don't know. So I'm not sure if that's realistic. How about let's throw Jameer in there? Yeah.
Okay. I can see
Jameer.
That.
Jameer's got that. Jameer could be a model, bro. Like, I'm like, what? How are you? You know what I mean? Yeah. You're this athletic, this good looking. Like, what happens? Yeah, get that pub out there, Jameer. Come on. Yeah, let's go. Running backs, season 1.
I'm gonna go defense, and I'm gonna go with the first iteration of DBs. And I'm going to say Kirby.
No, you were going to say Kirby or BB. That was in my head real quick.
Kirby's made for a series like
hilarious. This. Yes. Entertaining.
Like he's 100% made for TV. And so I think it'd be awesome, especially because we need a defensive version of this show. And so whether it's D-line, DBs, I say do DBs because I think DBs just have more personality. And I think the show would just be funnier. And I think there's so much about playing in the secondary that people don't understand.
Yeah.
Educate these people.
It'd be fun. Yeah, that's true. It's similar to what quarterback just did this second season, like, showing some intricacies of the game. And yeah, if you're going to argue against my idea, Jameer is pretty quiet. So I don't know that he'd be raring to do, but like Kirby would be excellent. And BB's too quiet too. Never mind. I have done scrap that idea. Kirby's
But
the
no, but
perfect one.
I think Ja would be fun though, because while Ja is very quiet in interviews, like you
He
can kind
does
of just
joke
get a
around.
sense though that Ja like has like a pretty big personality
Yes.
outside of like football. Like between the TikToks that he does with his girlfriend and just like the fashion, like everything, like there's so much more to unearth there.
Yeah.
And again, he's an up and coming, what top
Superstar.
I would say top three
Top
back in the
two.
league in my opinion.
Yeah, top three.
So
I'm just being a snob. I'm with top three. That's good.
but that's going to pretty much do it for us, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Again, Morgan, awesome to have you back. Obviously, guys, we're going to be getting back to our normal-ish routine of getting these videos out for you. Training camp is in a couple of weeks, so once that starts,
Yeah.
obviously we'll be doing breakdowns over on the podcast, but Morgan and I are also going to be doing our own reactions and giving our own feedback to what we're hearing coming out of training camp once that kicks off in about another week and a half or so. So definitely stay tuned to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel for that. You can also go over to the Pride of Detroit website because, like I said, that's where a lot of the written articles are going to be. So if you want to know like firsthand accounts from Jeremy and Eric, you're going to want to make sure that you're locked in on the POD website. Again, there's a link in the description that'll take you over there. And like always, if you want to stay locked in on the video content that we're doing over here, all you got to do, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and that'll have you squared away from beginning to end. So appreciate you guys for taking the time to check out the content. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you guys in the next one.